brief.
Thank you very much for the three presentations. My name is Cormac O'Rafferty. I lecture in physics here in Ireland, and I teach a course on climate change. Just on the issue of political will, I'm a bit pessimistic. As you know, in democracies, politicians very often, they don't really lead at all. They follow, as you know. So that raises the prospect of education. It seems to me that it's only when society has really appreciated what we're looking at the risks that are posed by climate change, it is only then that politicians will act. So I'm just mentioning it simply because it didn't come up yet this morning. It seems to me a lot of the problem is simply societal awareness of the problem. And just to add to that, in particular in Ireland, for example, Professor Sweeney went through the short-term risks. But of course there are the long-term risks as well. I mean, there have been many books written now about the possibilities of conflict worldwide as climate change really becomes a problem. And we've never really seen in recent times what refugees will look like in terms of millions rather than thousands, literally millions of people being forced to leave their countries. And presumably that will affect every country in the world, whether they're affected by climate concerns or not. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Which one of you would like to respond? John?
Do you want to take the three questions together?
Would you like to do that? Okay. Jean Pascal has suggested we take the three questions together and then we can have a joint response. So we have somebody over here. Is the mic on the way?
Hi, my name is Glenda. I have no special expertise, but I do know that all over the world people are campaigning and fighting against things which are harming the environment with the knowledge of the level of carbon emissions. I want to know why it is that we have to fight constantly against fracking, that we have to fight constantly against drilling, that they're still letting Shell drill in the Arctic, that people are looking forward in the energy industry to exploiting areas which are now, under ice. And it seems to me that there must be some way that these things can be made illegal. I know we talk about political pressure, but I see a lot of political pressure being applied, and the corporations seem to be, above and beyond the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. And there's a man over here.
Thank you. Eric Conroy on Tosca. I just want to bring up the issue of 2 degrees and 1.5 degrees. Mary Robinson mentioned it yesterday, and Jean-Pascal briefly talked about it. I think one of the slides he couldn't really go into detail. We're hearing that new evidence is showing that 2 degrees is too high, really. And I'm thinking in terms of the budget, the carbon budget that we've talked about, and the impact of 80% of fossil fuels being left in the ground on 2%. If it's 1.5, that percentage presumably goes up. And also whether it's 67% chance, that's a very low percentage. We should be looking for 90% or something like that. So what is the impact on, given that 0.7 is already, we have at the moment, we maybe another 5.5% locked in. It's getting very tight, is it not? I'd just like a comment on the 1.5 against the 2 degrees.
Thank you, Eric.
I'll start and try to be brief. Yeah. Well, on political will and the need for awareness, I would just like to refer to the poem I showed at the beginning. And on conflicts, I'd like to say that indeed the IPCC is covering that as well, and the risk of a threat from climate change to international security has been addressed in the IPCC report, but also by many instances interested by defense issues, actually. The second question is probably more a comment than a question, and I think this afternoon will be more appropriate to debate that, probably. And on the last issue on 2 versus 1.5, Yes, indeed, the IPCC doesn't close the door on the 1.5 possibility. The choice between 2 and 1.5 is actually requires a value judgment, which the IPCC is never going to make. It provides information, it highlights different levels of risk for different temperature levels, and then it's for policymakers and governments to decide what they think is appropriate. And up to now it's 2 degrees, but there's a process that's going on and that is supposed to be concluded at the end of this year within UNFCCC, the Climate Convention, to decide whether the 2-degree goal is kept or whether it's moved to another value. But the IPCC doesn't have a view itself on that, given that it would require value judgment. That's not a scientific conclusion. But as far as the feasibility of the 1.5 goal is, the IPCC only says that there are there's only a limited number of studies on how to reach 1.5, and but it says that it requires doing what would be needed to stay under 2-degree warming, but with even more urgency and energy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can also add on to the first comment and the second comment in terms of political will and the awareness. Most of the developing countries have that political will to address issues of climate change. You've noted that, like Malawi, we've signed all protocols, but then we don't have the money or the funding to implement those issues. And secondly, also, we don't have the capacity. Sometimes the ministers or the decision makers can have that capacity, but this is not translated to go to the community level. We cannot argue, we can't have strong NGOs to fight for what local people or poor people are requiring for. So seriously engaging young people in primary schools and the secondary schools could be one of the strategies. I think that's what is also happening between Malawi and Trocaire. We would like to have students from Ireland to work together with students in Malawi, start raising these issues at national level. In terms of the environmental issues raised by the lady there, we've also noted that a lot of companies that are drilling oil or are working on mining in the poor countries, they have more capacity than the governments. So when it comes to negotiations, the governments don't even know what they are negotiating for or what they are signing for. For example, 5 years ago, a company signed with the government of Malawi to mine, and they had to inform communities not to farm or not to build anything in that community. For 5 years, these women or communities, they have nothing to do. Last week, they had to go back to the court to say, we'd like to have our land back. So my main comment is that most of the developing countries, they don't have the capacity to negotiate with rich institutions. And there's need at global level through IPCC or other institutions to make sure that there's that equality for a better world. That's what I can say.
Thank you, David. John, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I think I'd echo all of that. I think the question over here related to the powerlessness of the citizen. And I think it's been a feature of the past few decades that we have handed more power to the corporate bodies of the world, the very powerful corporate bodies of the world, which have rendered the kind of issues that we've been talking about here for the 2 days secondary to the economic issues. And I think until we try somehow to get the costings related to climate change as integral parts of the economics curriculum in some shape or form, we're going to face that problem all the way through. I think Lord Stern described climate change as the greatest market failure the world has ever known. And in a sense, that's very true. But we have to bring climate change back into the market in a quantifiable way, somehow or other. And until we do that, we will be powerless. Just in relation to the question of political leadership as well, it's true, many people often ask, and I'm often asked by a politician, why is this issue important? Because nobody ever raised it at the doorstep with me in the last election. And my reply to that is usually, well, how many people raised banking regulation with you at the doorstep in the last election? And the question was blank. So I think we do have a responsibility to work from the bottom up on the people we elect, to impress upon them the importance of this prospect, and also do what we can to exert pressure from the top down, especially from Europe, to ensure that between the two, if you like, pressures, our politicians are responsive to the needs of the citizen in a more realistic way. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm not sure where the music is coming from. We need to finish now. I'd like to thank our three speakers wholeheartedly.